Good morning, we're back. I had big plans for this video series. Several different videos talking about overview of the build, tear down, cleaning, possibilities, rebuild. But life gets away from you. So didn't really have the time or the capacity to do all that. Had so much footage, it just became overwhelming. And I'm without a laptop right now. So I'll be doing this on my phone. So my little fat fingers will be having to iMovie this whole thing around. Um, but it came out really nice. So I really want to share this with you, the build from soup to nuts. But I guess I'll start from the top. This thing came out awesome. This Nishiki Meridian early 90s hybrid. It really came out nice. And I took it for a ride the other day, a little shakedown out at the rail trail / single track area. Sort of 2 for 1. Got to see how it did. Easy peasy um, rail trail stuff, and then took it on some smooth single track. To be fair, not really rocky or rooty or anything, but performed really well. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But first, I want to kind of walk you through the build. I guess we'll just start off talking about how it feels when you really nail something. And it's happened a lot for me. I'd say I feel lucky, but I'm pretty good at building bikes. I've gotten very good at this. I've built dozens of bikes, repaired many more. I maintain my little fleet pretty impeccably. All my bikes are rideable right now. That's the one thing that I kind of try to hold myself to with having way too many bikes, is that I can't have, half bikes, things hanging off of bikes. Oh, I gotta fix that. I gotta fix that. My sort of internal rule for my bikes is that they all have to be functioning all the time. I've gotten very good at it over the years. I don't mean that as a brag, but I do want to talk about that feeling that you get when you have this vision for what this is going to turn out as. I had this vision of this early 90s hybrid, bigger size, so it would fit me. That it would be this sort of, some on road, but mostly, rail trail, single track, fire road, kind of woodsy bike. Some bigger tires, as big as I can fit in there, and I nailed it, and that's a good feeling. And it's happened to me before, where you're building a bike, and you can kind of feel it as you're going along. You're like, wow, everything's fitting together nice. I'm not really having any clearance issues. Everything's mechanically sort of plug and play. It sort of becomes this zone that you get in where you're like, wow, like everything is good. And this bike is 99% that, and it can be a risk too. You buy a bike, so sometimes it's kind of sight unseen, or you maybe took it for a little ride. I took it for a spin in its older configuration, its original sort of narrow bars, old wheels that were sort of concave. And it felt good. Just the first impression felt like it fit me. It was a large bike. It's you can tell that. One little tip is that people have trouble sizing bikes, but if you look at this head tube, that sometimes is a really good. You can get a whole fist in there. That means it's a bigger bike. The smaller the head tube, the closer these top tubes and down tubes get together. That's a smaller bike, with some exceptions. Some of those old like Bridgestones, those MB bikes, um, you know, they were still kind of tight in the front. Makes it lower, makes you like you're more crouched down. But I kind of spied this and thought this is going to be fun. This is a higher quality hybrid than you usually get. The good Ishwata steel, as I talked about in that last video. Butted. I said double butted, but I don't know. I mean, it's butted somewhere, but my guess is that maybe these main tubes are butted, and that these rear tubes are, straight gauge. It's not the lightest frame ever. Once I got it all down to the frame, not super light, it's okay. But back to this whole notion of you know, reality meeting expectations with these kind of things. It's a really good feeling. You kind of like, you're doing those last couple bolts, and you know, things are cinching together, and you know, you set up everything, and then you tighten that headset is the last thing you do, and you know, you make sure the saddle is the right height, and you know, everything's clamped together. You go over all the bolts, and then you take it for that shakedown ride, and it rides, and it's not falling apart. Nothing is making noise. It just feels like a bike, and you're riding, and you're like, wow, this is you know, as it should be, and it's a smile on your face. It doesn't change when you're a kid. That's what I always tell people who are curious about getting back on bikes, and I say, you know what, like, it's that same feeling from when you were a kid. Like, that's why almost everybody in this world, one of those rare universal things that everybody learns how to ride a bike, and it's fun, and you end up really remembering that feeling when you get back on a bike as an adult. It's the same feeling, and why not? You know, it's not. It's why not? Why deprive yourself of that fun? So what I did was what I would usually do. I very rarely, if I have a bike project, I very rarely leave anything sort of unopened. You know, some people will, you know, all these bearings feel good. You know, I'm going to leave them in there. The headset feels good, or bottom bracket, or whatever. Like, a project like this, I'm going soup to nuts. I'm taking everything out. I took the bottom bracket off. That did take a little persuasion. I had to use my trusty 24-inch pipe wrench. That if you have an old house, you need one of these, or if you have stuck bottom brackets, that lock ring is just sometimes just tight on there, and these things do a really good job. You just got to be careful. You don't want to scratch the paint, or crush or deform the lock ring, which I didn't. I've done this a lot. It usually doesn't take a lot with all this leverage and weight, but this is a wonderful tool. If you're a homeowner, you should have one of these. Go get one. Ooh. But bottom bracket came off good. Crankset came apart just fine. That single speed narrow wide chainring, not single speed, just narrow wide chainring, 36T. Went on there just fine. It seems machined really nice. It's one of those Decas, ubiquitous Amazon kind of purchase thing. I had these old race face Chesters I put on here. They feel nice. They still. I didn't take these apart. I didn't do any kind of bearing thing with these or anything like that. They feel nice. It's okay. Pedals, you don't have to be super picky as long as they're not rattling or moving around anywhere. We got 1x10. So we have an SLX shifter up here, and something, I don't know, maybe 11, 12, but to 36. So it's 36 by 36. It's 1-to-1 ratio. Feels okay. I didn't feel like I was huffing and puffing up any hills when I was doing that single track or anything like that. Um, you know, I mean, being an old guy, you know, in the future, maybe if I came across like a 42 or something like that, 38, I don't know, but I wouldn't go down in the front, just because those higher gears, when you're on pavement or whatever, you really gotta shift down. We've got WTB Radlers 700 by 44. They measure a little bit less, I think, because they're narrow road bike rims. This rear one, I had to put two little 2mm spacers to get to that 135 spacing. This is actually 134. The math works out. It was a 130mm hub, two 2mm spacers. So you got 134, and that fits basically into the 135. There's no pinch, you know, that it will slide right out if you undo the quick release. But quick releases, as we know from Sheldon Brown, are remarkably strong, especially the cam ones that I have on here. And I've got one on my single speed. I've I've got one on another bike that's geared with this horizontal dropouts that, you know, it sticks. The quick release will hold everything together. Headset came out nice. I used the quill adapter so that I can run a threadless stem. And this is a 1/2 inch. It's bigger than 31.8, which was the standard for a very long time. Big wide handlebars. They feel nice. They don't feel too wide. I don't know. These cool Ritchie grips. They feel good in your hands. These levers, I did saw off the hacksawed off the shifter pods, so I could reuse the levers. I have other levers hanging around, but I'm an incorrigible reuser of things, as we'll find out when we get to the brakes. Feels good. The cable lollipops in here kind of, I don't know, they're moving around a little bit. They're where they're supposed to be right now. If they keep moving, then I'll reassess. But it'll be tough getting these grips off. These grips are very hard to get on, even with plenty of alcohol, rubbing alcohol. This cable hanger, the one that I originally had planned, I filed it down. I did a good job to make sure, because it was a little fat, so it was coming up against the cup here. It was too big, and it wasn't given enough threads for the top nut here. So I had to switch it out with the Bridgestone MB6 that I have. The brakes are about the only thing that I might end up tweaking a little bit. They work. They have good leverage, obviously, with these levers. These old school kind of, they're almost like descendants of like moto levers. These big Shimano levers. These post style canny brakes. The post style I'm not so scared of. The pads are just, again, I have trouble not reusing old things, and I've been known to reuse very old brake pads, which sometimes you get the luck of the draw and they work just fine. These are hard as a rock, and they do not work well. They're very loud. It sounds like they're just coming up. It sounds like they're just ripping scratches into the rim every time you pull on the brakes. It's a terrible auditory experience. I did mark the seat post just to make sure it's not dipping as I'm riding. The seat is another thing that I might tweak. Not the most comfortable thing, and it's a WTB saddle, which I am a huge fan of WTB saddles. I have a bunch of them, the Rocket, the Volt, things like whatever. I don't know. I don't really think it matters what WTB saddle you have. Modern wise, this is an older one. I don't know. It might be worn out, or it's just it wasn't the most supple feel on my bum. But we got a Dior XT rear derailleur back here, and I was a little afraid that it was sort of out of alignment, but I don't know. I did check the derailleur hanger with my super cool. I use an old wheel. The axle is the same threading, and if you align the wheel with the existing wheel, and you can, it's basically a derailleur alignment gauge. You use a ruler, make sure you're good and good and good. It's usually like 4 inches and some change. I've always found, like, no matter what bike it is, usually like 4 inches and some change is what you're looking for, rim to rim. But if you have a derailleur alignment gauge, those work really good. But it does the same thing. It just sort of lines things up, and it was out of alignment. But then I put the Dior XT derailleur on here, and it looked like it was a little funky, but it shifts perfectly. It shifts perfectly. First time out of the box. I had to set up the limit screws and the B screw a little bit. I didn't need a derailleur hanger extension either. I think it's modern enough that it can handle that 36T just fine. I didn't look it up, but I'm pretty sure it can handle it. But yeah, this all went together really well. It went back together. I cleaned it, polished it. I used this kind of like car polish. It's sort of mild, but I've had it for years. I never actually used it on a car. I used it on the bikes. Polish and then wax. You got to put the wax on after the polish. You got to make sure, because the polish will weaken the paint, I think. I even, when I was doing the cables, I had a bunch of these little plastic nubs that I always forget to put on when you when you're recabling a bike, and then you don't want to take it apart to do that again. Um, but I remember this time it prevents the sort of like clanging of the cables against the bike in certain configurations. But yeah, so got it back together, got it cleaned, got it back together. Um, it was a very straightforward build, no front derailleur to worry about. That's the great thing about 1X, is that you're only adjusting one set of gears, and the front ones can be extremely picky depending on what kind of like indexing system you have. Grip shift easier, Campagnolo easier, Shimano 123. You gotta really make sure it's right, and then you got clamp sizing, and it's a whole thing. So I do love 1X. I find myself increasingly gravitating towards the 1X end of things when I'm thinking about builds. I have an idea for my next project, whenever that will be. Would be an old 650B build. That should be fun. But came together. Went out the other day. It was really nice out. Went to the rail trail. We have a bunch of nice local rail trails around here. Um, and this one in particular is cool because there's a rail trail, but then there's some offshoots. Like there's an old abandoned road. There's really nice single track that's maintained by some cool dudes out there and dudettes, and it is really nice, flowy. Not a lot of rocks, not a lot of roots, which is rare around here in New England. Really fast, and I just loved it. I loved how the bike felt right away. Felt natural, felt comfortable. I didn't feel like the stem was too short. I didn't feel like the bars were too wide. It was just, everything came together. It was so nice. It was perfect on the rail trail and the fire roads, things like that. Just, comfortable, all day cruiser kind of thing. These tires, these WTB tires, which I've said this a bunch of times, I do reserve the right to go tubeless with them. I don't know when that's going to happen. These have tubes in them now, but I didn't overinflate them. I was at, like, I don't know, 30, 40 psi, some, a little give in there, and they just felt really nice. Just felt great. Like, not too hard, not like floppy, which I was afraid of being sort of a plump tire. No rub in the back, no nothing. They were just really nice. Tires can make a bike. It's just it's just how it is. And these, very nice. My first set of WTB, like, high quality tires, and I am very impressed. Clipless pedals I might go to, I don't know, but I kind of like having the flat pedals because it's makes it more accessible. Like, if you just want to run out and go for a ride, just, you got your sneakers on, just go. Whatever makes it easier. Uh, yeah, but that's about it. It was just so much fun riding this thing. This is going to be a regular in the fleet. Sometimes you build a bike and sometimes you nail it, and you're like, this bike is nice. I really did everything I was supposed to do. It came out really nice. It came out how I wanted it. But then, for some reason or another, whether it's sizing or comfort or just whatever, sometimes bikes just kind of sink to the bottom, and they don't get used as much. I have a couple where I'm like, I don't know. I had a couple I got rid of this spring that, they just weren't getting the love that they should. Um, but this one is versatile enough. It's comfortable enough. It's fun enough. That's going to be a regular, I think. And that ride was so much fun. I can't wait to take this out again. And that is a really good sign when you're looking forward to another ride with a bike. That's really something that is special. But yeah, if you ever see any of these early '90s hybrids, snatch it up. Even if it's like halfway, look for the good tubing, good size. because they do clean up nicely. They take modern upgrades very well, and they're just really fun bikes. They're sort of, you know, gravel bikes now that they have are very different. You know, they're different. A lot wider tires, carbon. Much more fine tuned. But these can do a good chunk of it, and I think you'd be surprised. So thanks for watching.